By looking around, this is one of the most wonderfully curated bookstores in town. You'll find a lot of books here that you will not find at other bookstores in town. If that's not enough of a selling point, I'll just go ahead and say, buy books. Buy some books while you're here. That's a good idea. We really like this place, want to keep it open. It's been open for about a year. Poetry events going on here, about one a week on average, which is fantastic. So keep this place going and alive, and I'll let AR do the more official introduction to the evening.
Hello, thank you for getting out in the cold. I know we are not used to it, and your presence is appreciated. In case you don't know, this is a Raw Paw event. Raw Paw is an art collective, a publisher, a record label, and they're doing tons of good things in this city and elsewhere. You may have seen them on the cover of the Chronicle 2 weeks ago. They're getting a lot of attention, and it is our pleasure to be partnered up with them and bring you this reading. We also want to encourage you to submit to Raw Paw. You can go to rawpaw, rawpawatx.com, and they're currently taking submissions for their alien-themed zine, which is poetry, fiction, nonfiction, art. They want it all. If you have anything that fits under that umbrella, send it to them. Also, buy books. And we just want to let you know that this reading is moving to Wednesdays. It will be February 11th, right?
Yep.
So heads up. And has everyone entered the raffle? Who has not entered the raffle? Okay.
Come on down. I'll take care of it.
Tonight we are going to be giving away a Raw Paw package. You won't get it tonight though, so sorry of those for you who like instant gratification. The founder of Raw Paw will personally deliver it to your house. So you'll be getting a chapbook, not sure which one, and also the Dream Zine, which is their last zine, which is the thing for sale in the plastic packaging back there. And that's about a $30 value, not to sound like an infomercial, but that's really cool. So please enter, and we'll be drawing for that later tonight. And with that, I will let Wade introduce our first reader.
We're going to kick the night off with Carie Juettner. She's been published 5 times in the Texas Poetry Calendar, which you can buy at Malvern Books. Look at that. Twice in Diversity, which is the anthology of the Austin International Poetry Festival, which is coming up in April this year. And her first place poem, Balanced Rock, Big Bend National Park, was in the Poetry Society of Texas's 2013 Book of the Year. So she's also been published in a lot of cool anthologies that ask for poems like on video games and coffee and all that cool stuff. She's currently handling all things membership as the corresponding secretary of the Austin Poetry Society and is a co-organizer of the Poetry Caravan, which is another Austin Poetry Society initiative that basically takes poetry to people who can't come to events like this, people in nursing homes, hospitals, those sorts of situations. And that started up just this month, and there have been a number of readings. It's going fantastic. I'll let her tell you more about that. I met Carie through the Texas Poetry Calendar reading, and every year that I've heard her read, she always reads at least one poem that just sears my brain, just sticks with me basically throughout the year. She's also really super nice, so if you want to ask her about any of her poems or any of the anthologies she's been in, or how you too can become a member of APS, I'm sure she'd love to chat with you. So without further ado, Carie Juettner. Let's give her a round of applause.
That was a very nice introduction. Thanks. I'm so glad to see you guys all here. I'm glad to be here. I've been to Malvern before, but not as a reader, so I'm really excited about this. One quick note about the Poetry Caravan before I get started with my reading. Everything he said is correct. We did launch in Austin just this month, but it actually started in New York several years ago. Usha Akella, who's another board member of the Austin Poetry Society, founded it in upstate New York, and it still continues to be successful there, even though she now lives in Austin. They've had over 900 free readings at retirement homes and senior homes and hospitals and shelters since it started there. And we've had 2 readings so far here in Austin. They've gone really well, and we're looking forward to continuing it. We have 4 venues right now, which are all retirement homes. Excuse me. And we have readings at those places through April, and our schedule of poets is pretty full. But starting in May, we want to add more venues, and in order to add more venues, we need to add more poets, more readers. So if you're interested in finding out more about it, we have a Facebook page. It's facebook.com/poetrycaravanaustin, or feel free to stick around afterwards and talk to me about it, and I can give you more info. And really, we've been saying poets, we need poets to come and read, but honestly, we just need people who like to read poetry. You don't even have to write it yourself, because at these readings, the kind of audiences that we have, they like to hear classic poetry. They like to hear things that they remember from their youth and they grew up with, and you don't even have to read anything that you wrote yourself. If you just want to get up there with a book of classic poems and read some to these audiences, they would love that. So let me know if you're interested in hearing more. Okay, I want to start off tonight by reading a poem by my favorite poet, Naomi Shihab Nye. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She lives in San Antonio, and I go to hear her read every chance that I get. This one's called The Story Around the Corner. The story around the corner is not turning the way you thought it would turn, gently in a little spiral loop, the way a child draws the tail of a pig. What came out of your mouth, a riff of common talk. As a sudden weather shift on a beach, sky looming mountains of cloud in a way you cannot predict or guide, the story shuffles elements, darkens, takes its own side, and it is strange. Far more complicated than a few phrases pieced together around a kitchen table on a July morning in Dallas, say, a city you don't live in where people might shop forever or throw 1,000 stories away. You who carried or told a tiny bit of it aren't sure. Is this what we wanted? Stories wandering out, having their own free lives? Maybe they are planning something bad. A scrap or cell of talk you barely remember is growing into a weird body with many demands. One day soon, it will stumble up the walk and knock hard, and you will have to answer the door. I have that poem framed in my office at home, and it reminds me that the stories I write don't always turn out the way I think they're going to, and it's just a little inspiration for that. Okay, I'm going to read a few haiku. This first one was published in last year's Texas Poetry Calendar. Youth puts on a coat. From the sleeve emerges an old and withered hand. Thank you. And then these are some more lighthearted haiku that I've published to my blog. Turned the light back on to see if the moth was gone. Counterproductive. I dreamed you did the dishes, woke to a sink full of disappointment. Oh, my husband. All right. Sorry, honey. Since you like that one, here's one more husband poem. He dies 1,000 deaths when we're apart. Damn those gaming marathons. All right. This next one is in this year's Texas Poetry Calendar, which is on sale for $6 right over there behind the audience. This one is a tritina, and it's about summer, so we can warm up with this poem tonight. It's called August in Texas. Dust from Africa hovers in the Texas sky, turning the cloudless blue into a gritty gray, filling my lungs with the sleepy silt that rattles when I breathe. I suck in air, listen to the rattle of the mower next door, kicking brown exhaust into the sky, and glance at the thermometer, 100 degrees in the gray shadow of the porch. August is a heavy month, heavy heat, heavy gray stones peeking out from the dead grass where a rattlesnake coils in the shade of a rosemary bush, her tongue tasting the sky. I squint at the sky, eyes burning in the gray sunlight, heart rattling for September. Don't you just feel the warmth? I'm actually shaking because I'm so cold I can't warm up these days. This next one is a poem about the writing process, or at least my writing process. There's a quote that I've heard, I don't know who said it, whenever I see it, it says anonymous. It says, get your protagonist up a tree, throw rocks at her, get her down. It's supposed to be that easy. You get your character, put her in a situation, you throw some conflicts at her, get her out of the situation, and the novel is done. Well, this is my poem called Up a Tree. It's not as easy as I thought it would be to make her climb. I coax and I coax, but still she sits at the base of the trunk, yawning. I try throwing rocks at her there, but she ducks and laughs, rolls the small round stones between her fingers, collects them in a jar. I weave a hammock for her, something to lift her off the ground at least, but the thread becomes tangled on a twig and the whole thing unravels. Days pass. My character is content to lounge in the shade, munching on apples, dozing on the grass, her arm for a pillow. I hunt larger rocks, but all I can find is sand. I'm starting to think the one who is up a tree is me. I'm not so good at plot. I enjoy writing poetry a lot more than the novel I'm trying to finish. All right, let's do something different. I am a big fan of found poetry. Everyone know what found poetry is? So it's poetry that already exists within a bunch of other words and you find it. You go and cut words and phrases out of a magazine and form them to a poem, or you listen to conversations and pick out pieces, or I have on my blog some great book title found poems, where I was organizing my bookshelf one day and realized that one title made sense with the next title, and then all of a sudden it was 4 hours later and there were books all over my house, and I was like stacking them up and trying to see what sort of crazy things I could find, and I found a lot. Well, about a year ago or so, I bought a book here by Ken Fontenot called In a Kingdom of Birds. And whenever I read poetry books, I stick little bits of paper or sticky notes in the pages where a poem or a line of poetry stuck out to me and that I liked. And in his book, it wasn't really whole poems that spoke to me. It was little phrases, little lines, just some really great lines of poetry in there. And I honestly don't remember what made me think to do this. I must have just seen some connection, I don't know. But when I finished, I thought, what would happen if I just took every line of poetry that spoke to me in this book and put them all together? And so that's literally all I did. I promised that I didn't cheat. I didn't rearrange anything. I didn't add anything. I just went through the book from start to finish, and I took every line that I had underlined and put it together in a poem. And so I called it In a Kingdom of Poetry. His book is called In a Kingdom of Birds. And so this is a found poem made up of my favorite lines from Ken Fontenot's book. The grackles can't keep from talking, muttering vowels only a grackle would know. Happiness works late shifts in the morgue, you once said. Readers, after all, view the world most passionately, as if their own lives were at stake. Say we're here because the clouds believe in us, or because the stars knew us in another life. Thinking is a kind of listening. Thoughts echo from the darkness around the soul. The sea is full of nouns, the sky is full of verbs, but no syntax could quite replace what the stars send down in their wisdom. So many feet make up the joys of centipedes. I would like to take a caterpillar and turn it inside out like a sock, for I am not content to munch on peanuts when there is poetry around. Insanity humbles us. So stick around, March. We need you as the zoo needs to have a lion escape every once in a while. No one answers a knocking at some door. Someday, the pony who visits you will be your companion again. You may disagree, but I think that's pretty cool. So, so anyway, I haven't done it yet, but ever since then I have wanted to just go pick up all my favorite poetry books and go through and see if something neat like this happens when I do this to those. This is the poem that Wade mentioned that won first place in one of the Poetry Society of Texas contests last year. It's called Balanced Rock, Big Bend National Park. Light lays down on the outcropping of stone. Vertical peaks rise smaller, smaller, suggesting skeletons, desert dragons sleeping beneath the surface. Twilight creeps up from behind, drops the temperature like it was an accident, nudges thoughts to posted warnings, moves mind from buried beasts to live ones. Hiking down is never the same. Shadows alter landscapes, scoot boulders, shift footpaths. Shoe slips on loose gravel, dislodging composure. Two buzzards perch on cliff edge for mood. Dusk in my eyes, a rock clutched tight in my fist. Step, listen, step, listen. Wonder if the mountain lions are hungry. That's about our first trip to Big Bend, when we went hiking up to Balanced Rock a little too late in the day, and it was a longer hike than we thought, and it was dusk when we were walking back, and I really was carrying a rock in case a giant mountain lion attacked us. My husband's ploy was just to leave me for bait, I think, and run. So I had a rock to hit him, and that way we'd both be even. Okay, this is the one that was published in the video game anthology, which was called Insert Coin Here, which was put out by Kind of a Hurricane Press a couple of years ago. How many of you have played the Oregon Trail video game? A few hands, okay. So for those of you who haven't, anyone my age grew up in middle school playing a very old video game called the Oregon Trail that was meant to teach us what it was like being on the Oregon Trail. So we had to buy ammo and buy a team of oxen and then shoot things with the keyboard. And anyway, I never actually made it to Oregon, so it's a good thing that I don't live back then. I'm sure it was actually possible, but I never did. And if you died, which you invariably did, or at least I did, or your family members did, then you got to write little epitaphs on tombstones on the side of the trail, and then you got to leave those tombstones. This was like a really advanced thing for a video game back then, I think, because the next person who played the game could read the tombstones that were left from the person before, which is important to know for this. So this is my poem, Growing Up on the Oregon Trail. I remember the terrible day when my cousin died of dysentery. I'd gone hunting, trying to kill enough deer to feed our family of 8, but had wasted most of our ammo instead, thanks to a sticky space bar. I think I was swindled in independence by the cheery shopkeeper who sold me the team of oxen that perished fording the swollen river halfway to Chimney Rock. But I was only a child, not properly schooled in the ways of haggling. History repeated itself in that computer lab, as over and over again I set out for Oregon, never successfully reaching my destination, always leaving a trail of broken hearts and broken axles in my wake. But I still learned valuable lessons, like it doesn't matter how many bison you shoot if you can only carry 100 pounds of meat back to the wagon, and you're not allowed to name one of your family members after your dog if you're going to cry when he dies. But the most eye-opening moment occurred the day I logged into my doomed expedition after one of the big kids had used the computer, and I came upon a tombstone that said, "Damn, I died a virgin." Pioneer life was no picnic. Harsh landscapes, brutal conditions. You could lose your innocence out there and some of your best friends to snakebite. All right, I just have one more. I am going to end with a poem by one of my other favorite poets, a Billy Collins poem, and I'm sure everyone's familiar with him. I don't know how popular this particular poem is, but I used to teach it every year when I taught 7th grade. It's called On Turning 10. The whole idea of it makes me feel like I'm coming down with something worse than any stomach ache or the headaches I get from reading in bad light, a kind of measles of the spirit, a mumps of the psyche, a disfiguring chicken pox of the soul. You tell me it is too early to be looking back, but that is because you have forgotten the perfect simplicity of being one and the beautiful complexity introduced by 2. But I can lie on my bed and remember every digit. At 4, I was an Arabian wizard. I could make myself invisible by drinking a glass of milk a certain way. At 7, I was a soldier. At 9, a prince. But now I am mostly at the window, watching the late afternoon light